It's now time for the Wedcast, brought to you by Film Media Wedding Videography, 3-time Wedding Industry Award regional finalist. Here is your host, James. Welcome to episode 4 of the Wedcast. My name is James, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who tuned in last week to hear the lovely Keely Sparks from Red and Black Fun Casinos. We had an absolute brilliant time recording that one. That was really, really good. So my guest today, where do I start about my guest today? My guest today is more like a brother to me. He's a wedding supplier, he's a best friend. I was the best man at his wedding. He's phenomenal at what he does. He is a magician, and not just a magician, but he's a host of a wedding. Today I have Ed Crafer, magician, with me, and he will talk to us about what inspired him to get into magic. He'll talk to us about what he does and what he brings to your wedding as a magician, and not just that, he'll talk to us about all the things that a magical host does at your wedding as well. So, also this week, the good thing about it is I have Ed Crafer here in the Film Media Wedcast studio. So we're going to be doing this one live. Obviously, the last few Wedcasts we've had, it's been on the phone. So this one's going to be actually in person. So it's going to be a lot of fun to do. Also, Leo will be here. He's got 2 questions for Ed this week, so which is going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on with today's show. It's going to be a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Ed Crafer. Hello, Ed. Welcome to the Wedcast. How are you today?
I'm sorry, James. I've lost my voice.
He's lost his voice. Should we call it the Wedcast or the Edcast today?
Edcast.
The Edcast. For one episode, we're going to call it the Edcast. So thanks for coming on.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. Pleasure to be here.
So, Ed, tell us about what got you into magic.
So, what got me into magic? Well, I fell in love with the craft and art of magic at the age of 4. I went to a circus with my mum and dad and saw a magician in the show, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And I was just absolutely blown away.
Was there anything particular that he did that made you go, wow, I need to do this?
He was doing the big illusions at the time. So if I remember correctly, it was a guy called Dan the Magic Man. I still have the original poster.
Was this at the Hippodrome in Yarmouth?
I can't remember. No, it was one of those big circus tents that they
ones
put
that
up in
just
a
pop
field. Yeah,
Oh, nice,
absolutely. Saw this guy in the show, and he was doing all the big illusions. And basically, at the end of the show, my mum and dad got me a poster
of Dan the Magic Man.
Not just of him, but I remember we went around and actually got all the signatures of all the circus performers, and I still have that poster in my old bedroom at my mum and dad's. Absolutely, signed by all the cast. Yeah, signed by all the cast, and it was a show called Nelly the Elephant Circus.
There's always been a way that people imagine a magician looks. Do you know what I mean? They always have like a top hat and a cloak. Is that the kind of look that you wanted to go with when you first started this?
Well, I think that is the symbolic look of a magician in the very beginning. When a young child sees a magician for the first time, the instant reaction is like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You know, how did they do that?
They've got the cane, haven't they?
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, he did have a grey tailcoat. He did have a top hat because you're working in a circus. And in a circus or even in a theatre, everything is larger than life. You know, you have to create a character, something symbolic like a magician or even a clown that comes across to an audience in a very amazing way.
It's got to give them that wow factor.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about.
But obviously, we're in a world now, it's a very different world now, 2023, where magicians aren't portrayed like that. It's more smart suit or, you know, they've all got their different ways. Obviously, I've seen you work hundreds of times.
You've tolerated me.
I've tolerated you, yeah. But you don't turn up with, you know, like that. In, as we said, with the cloak and the hat. And do you think that's just a new look or a new era for magicians?
That's an interesting question. And I think it's all about what suits you as a character. For me, I've always dressed very smart. In the very beginning, when I was a child, you have a black cloak and you have a top hat because, again, it's that symbolic image of what you think a magician should look like, with a little rabbit, maybe a puppet out of a hat, like with the really cool Marvin's Magic sets that you can buy your son or daughter for a Christmas or a birthday present. It gets them on that journey of magic.
It's kind of that kind of people think, oh, the magician, like as what we just described.
Absolutely. And growing up, I'll quickly jump back a little bit in time.
Absolutely.
From the age of 4, again, as I mentioned earlier, was when I was just absolutely bewildered by the art form of magic. And again, I say it again, it is a craft. It's a craft. It's like any skill. You have to train yourself. You have to learn what you're doing, and then you take it upon there. And when I was then 8 years old, I'll quickly jump in. 8 years old is when I started doing shows for the first time, and it was really nerve-wracking.
So you didn't go straight to weddings?
I didn't, no. Weddings came a little bit later, but you naturally fall into that part of the life, which I'll touch upon shortly. But yeah, 8 years old, I fell in love with then performing magic professionally for audiences.
So like stage shows or close-up?
It was actually children's entertainment. So children were my first professional audience, you could say. But
kids are honest.
They are very brutally honest.
So if you mess up, they're going to point out you've messed up.
They do, yeah. But I think the way the world is now, you treat children as young adults. They're not silly. They're like little bloodhounds. If they smell that something's gone wrong, they will tell you.
They know.
They do.
They point that out.
But again, it's all about how you structure your show, how you make it entertaining. But what I do find sometimes quite frustrating is people do look at magic and say, "Oh, it's just for children." It isn't. It's all in the way that you perform it. It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. I'm very passionate about trying to change people's minds, because I do have that mindset that, as I say, that it is just magic, is just for children. Mm-hmm. It isn't, it really isn't. It's all in the way that you perform it. So my style now, as opposed to when I started, is very contemporary. I'm very modern. I have a lot of fun and banter with people. Sometimes I even use simple conversation as entertainment, because that's sometimes what people need, rather than an actual trick.
So you're young as 8, you're doing kids magic?
I was doing kids magic, so I started off as Magical Ed back in the day.
Magical Ed. So was this at school? You doing this at school?
I was actually doing shows when I was in middle school.
In middle school.
And then it went all the way into high school. And this is the funny thing, I had to take in my diary when I was in high school to my head of year and my head teacher to actually prove that I was doing all these shows. And that was the reason I couldn't do my coursework or homework. No, exactly. And they kind of understood, but in the beginning they're like, "Oh no, he's taking the mick.
He's just messing around.
He's messing around. He just doesn't want to do the work." But no, it's completely opposite. So I had a very business head on from a very early age.
We're going to jump forward a little bit now. So obviously you're part of the Magic Circle. How did that come about?
I joined the Magic Circle as a young magician.
Do you have to get invited to that, or did you join that yourself?
You're able to be a member of the youth initiative of the Magic Circle, which is called the Young Magicians Club, and you can be a member from the age of 12 to 18, and that is where I spent most of my years back and forth from Norwich to London with my mum and dad, being taught at the Magic Circle by lots of incredible teachers.
Wow.
Who became mentors, and they teach you lots of different aspects and genres of magic. So if you're interested in stage magic, performing on a stage, you learn how to stand on a stage and present yourself.
So they do that actually at the Magic Circle. They give you that experience.
They do. It's a little bit like Hogwarts, to explain it to the listener.
Right.
That's the best way you can describe it.
So was there a particular magician, though, obviously apart from Dan the Magic Man, that you looked at the work and thought, actually, I want to be like that? Obviously, there's the great Houdini,
of course.
Modern day magicians as well. Obviously, like Darren Brown's not really a magician, is he? But modern day people who can do things that make you go, wow.
Yeah.
Is there people that you idolise? Think, actually, I quite like their style. Maybe I could borrow some of that and make it my own?
Interesting question, James. Again, we have to go back in time in a little bit of history, really, to where you first, when you're young and you see your first magician, and you have that image, that iconic image of what a magician should look like, or what kind of magic you should be performing. So that might be producing playing cards out of the air at your fingertips, producing silk handkerchiefs, candles, fire, absolutely, dressed up in a very classical way, in a set of tails like Fred Astaire, a top hat, a cane, even producing doves. That is what your iconic image of a magician is when you first learn about it. And I thought, that's what I need to do. So to answer your question, there was a fantastic magician at the time called Lance Burton, who was an American magician. And to help the listener understand a little bit about who Lance Burton was, he had his own Las Vegas show. But in 1984, he was the first American magician to win what we call the Olympics of Magic, which is called FISM, which is held once every 4 years in different countries in the world.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know about this.
yeah, there's the sports Olympics that we all know about, and there's actually Magic Olympics where the best of
Fism.
the best are actually invited to perform their act, whether it's close-up magic, where it's performed right underneath your nose, or stage magic, where you present your act choreographed to music, and you present this to a theatre, and you do. It's a little bit like Britain's Got Talent, I understand, where you do have judges judging your act, and they judge you on presentation, your act in itself, your choreography, as well as the actual magic that you're performing. So it's very interesting.
So what got you to the point where you thought, right, let's do some weddings? How did you get to that point?
You've asked a very, very important question. So I was actually 11 years old, really, when my shows started properly taking off.
The Magical Ed Show.
Absolutely. So from the age of 8, I was doing a few shows here and there to get me the experience that I needed. And I think if I remember back, I was about 11 years old when I first did my first ever wedding.
At 11?
At 11 years old. And at the time I was doing a mixture of close-up magic.
Not up at the bar.
Not at the bar. No. I was doing a mixture of close-up magic, which is one of the art forms that I specialise in mainly now, as well as the children's entertainment. So I would do a children's show first, and then entertain the adults later.
So how would you get that gig? You're 11 years old, and someone goes, "We're getting married next Saturday. Can you appear?" Is that what happened?
Yeah, people would find me in Yellow Pages of all places.
So you're doing this wedding at 11.
Mm-hmm.
You've never experienced anything like this. How did you find that? Because obviously you know what weddings are like. They can be quite full-on days. Mm-hmm. Well, they are full-on days throughout the industry. Obviously, if it doesn't matter if you're a photographer or you're a DJ or a videographer like myself, they are long days.
They
so
are.
Was it a case of just rocking up in the evening and just doing some magic? How did you even come about doing that?
Okay, when I was doing children's shows,
Did you have a plan?
Yeah, it would always be that awkward stage where the bride or the groom phones up and says, "Oh, we'd like some entertainment for the children while the speeches are happening. Can we leave them with you in another room?"
Kind of like take them off.
Yeah, I'd kind of like be a creche. It would like you're the entertainer. There's the creche. You're entertaining the children for now. Yeah, but obviously, as it's difficult as we progress through the times where you must. It's so important to have a couple of adults there present, so they're like chaperones.
Absolutely.
To look after the children, they're involved in the show. And as my entertainment progressed through the later years, I became not just a children's entertainer, but a family entertainer, where my show was suitable for the adults as well as just the children. And sometimes, let's be transparent, my show would actually at stages be just for the adults. I'd enjoy doing
11.
Yeah, from the age of 11 onwards, my show would be based just as much for the adults as it was for the children.
Kids.
So that was where you incorporate those two worlds of entertainment into one particular show.
So you were kind of at a path at this point. So you were doing some weddings and you were still doing your kids' shows.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, I knew you when you were kind of coming to the tail end of your kids' shows. You don't do that as much anymore. You've now moved more into weddings. Mm-hmm. What made you make that transition eventually from kids' shows into weddings full time?
What made me start the transition? Okay, so I'm just thinking about how I can answer your question.
Obviously, we had Quackers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's address Quackers. Quackers was
Is
my.
he here with us today?
I don't know. I hope he's stuffed in a box somewhere. Flipping duck, he took over my life. Quackers, to explain him, he became like an integral part of my show as my ventriloquist puppet.
But not for the weddings.
Not for the weddings. No,
he would have looked good in a suit.
He would. He wore a bow tie though.
Bow tie.
That was his signature piece. So let's start with Quackers. So Quackers, as I mentioned, was a very important part of the show because he broke the show up and added a little bit of light and shade.
Just ventriloquism side.
And it's still something I practice every now and again.
You still practice it?
I can't do the actual voice because his voice was very much like a Darth Vader.
Can you do the voice?
No, I'm not going to do that now. No. Maybe for another podcast.
Maybe for another one next year.
Maybe for another time. We'll talk about it. But yeah, he added a little bit of variety and light and shade into the show where the children are like, "Oh, is he coming out of the box yet?" No, he's not. We're going to do some more magic.
So I've seen Quackers in action at kids' parties.
You have.
And he can be a little bit naughty.
He's was very cheeky.
Especially with some of the mums and dads in the audience.
Well, he was a very brutal puppet. So he would, if an adult was talking, he'd call them out.
Yeah.
He'd say things like, "Why are you talking in the show? The show's this way. Are you having a good conversation over there?
Watch me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And because you can, if you use the puppet to voice your frustrations, you often find that the puppet can get away with anything, which is great. And he pulls the adults into the show and helps them to enjoy the experience as well as the children.
Because you got to a point where you struggled with your voice.
I did.
Is that one of the reasons you left the kids shows?
Yeah, I think that was the end factor for me. Again, being honest, I'd done over 20 years as magical ed, performing for children's parties, birthdays, private events, adult events, corporate events. Again, weddings. Would go back to the weddings.
Because you were doing weddings on the Saturday, then the Sunday morning you were off doing kids.
That's
kids
right.
Shows.
Yeah, and quite often, to answer your question, my voice was burnt out. It got to a point where my voice was completely burnt out, and you have to struggle. And I actually developed nodules on my vocal cords.
God.
So we're talking ENT surgeon,
So
camera
you had
in,
to make
down.
you had to make that decision.
Yeah, it got to the point where I thought I'm beating my voice up at every children's show, because even though you have a microphone, there's so much noise, there's so much energy that I have to put into the show. And
Do you miss it?
I do miss it a little bit. I miss doing children's shows, but I have to be realistic. I want to keep my voice.
So going back to the point where you said when you were younger, you were doing these weddings, and that first inquiry came through, or second, third, or whatever it was, and the couple were kind of like, "We want you to come and entertain the children while we're doing this." How did you go from that point to like, well, actually, I'm not just here to entertain the kids, I'm here to entertain everyone, and I want to be taken as a serious person who's a supplier who comes to your wedding and entertains not just the kids, but your guests and you as the bride and groom. How did you get to that point?
I think it was more of a transitional period, really. I found that close-up magic or entertaining everybody at one time works so much better. Unfortunately, sometimes children's entertainers, they're looked down upon, and they do, as I mentioned earlier, think, "Oh, it's just for the children." It's not. Magic is for everybody. Let's jump into weddings, shall we?
Let's jump to weddings. So, what do you do at a wedding? I mean, obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you do two things. Obviously, you're a magician.
Yes.
But you're also a host.
I am.
We'll talk about the host side in a little while. Let's just talk about, as a magician, what is your role at someone's wedding? So if I was getting married, which I'm not, but if I was getting married and I wanted to book you,
yes,
what can you bring to my day? Tell me.
What can I bring to your day?
What do you do?
I bring fun. I bring laughter. I bring astonishment. And plenty of lifetime magical memories. That's the idea. That is the role that I play on a wedding day. My job during the drinks reception, let's talk the drinks reception, where it's very popular to have a magician during this time. Because let's piece it together. The bride and groom are off having their photographs
They've just
taken.
got married. I've taken them off.
That's right.
The photographer, and we're doing what we're doing, getting their couple shots.
That's
what
right.
are you doing with the guests?
I'm entertaining them, so I'm mingling around, breaking the ice, bringing people together who may have not met each other before. So Uncle Barry over here hasn't met John over here, or Tracy over there. My job is to bring people together and keep the conversation flowing so they don't feel like strangers to each other. And magic and entertainment, however it's presented, is a great form of and a way of connecting people. So it's not just about performing a few tricks, it's about actually making people feel comfortable, bringing that sense of wonder. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? So for me, it's about bringing a party atmosphere and actually creating an experience for people that they remember from, John and Tracy's wedding day. It's so important to create a nice atmosphere so people feel comfortable and they love that wedding day for all the right reasons. For me, you mingle around from group to group during a drinks reception, and I tend to find that most wedding couples, they tend to have a what's called the civil ceremony nowadays. Civil ceremony is obviously where you get married at your venue, and everything takes place at that one venue all day. If they're having a church wedding, it's a little bit of a different story. You have to plan with the bride and groom what time you're going to be at the venue, so they arrive from the church to the venue and you're already there entertaining the people as they arrive, all the guests that is, they arrive at the venue to enjoy the drinks and canapes, and that's where I tend to begin.
So that's where you'd begin.
That's right.
So would you be then into the evening as well if they booked you for that amount of time?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the time, my wedding couples tend to book me all day, not just for during the drinks reception or even the evening turnaround or the turnover period, where the staff or the venue is actually turning the room around ready for the evening celebrations. So they're the two popular times of the wedding day that I tend to be invited.
Okay, so if you were there a bit later in the evening, obviously we've got the DJ playing, we've got a band playing. How do you combat trying to do what you do for people against them going to leave to go on the dance floor?
Okay. It goes back to making sure that you can actually structure your performance times correctly. So I tend to advise my brides and grooms. So if I'm with the couple at their wedding during the drinks reception, nowadays in these modern times, drinks receptions, they tend to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the numbers of guests that you've got invited, or just the structure and the tapestry of their day that they've created. If it's the evening time, that evening change around period, people are in a very, very tired period. So I call them wedding zombies. Zombies. You've had so much food, you've drunk some wine, you've listened to the speeches. You've been to so many weddings before, I'm sure, not just as a guest, but also obviously as the other way around, not just as videographer, but as a guest. And you're shattered. You are shattered, and you need some life kicked back into you.
And that's where you come in.
That's where I come in. I kick people back into
the
party mode. That's right. So by the time the first dance happens, everyone's then on the dance floor, and I'm done because I can't compete with a live band or a DJ at that stage.
Yeah. So you've done everything you need to get to that point.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
As a bride and groom, then do you get to spend much time with them on the day, or is it specifically for the guests?
This is something interesting. I always provide for my couples. I actually perform for them a one-on-one show. So that's an actual set of routines.
So is this just as a magician point of view to start with?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I perform for them as their magician, and I will actually present to them a very nice choreographed finale that I've worked years upon. Even the scripting, it's so important to feel that love between the couple and you. So it's a set of tricks which is all themed to falling in love, getting married together, and their start as in their new chapter as Mr. and Mrs.
So how would I find you? So obviously I know you're online. Do you ever okay, so if I wanted to book yourself as a magician, as you said earlier, there's a few magicians in the area.
There are.
Okay. How can I see you perform that makes me want to book you? How can I come find you? Do I just see you at another wedding, or do I see you at wedding fairs, or do you have videos online of how?
You've got lots of different options. I haven't been at quite a few wedding fairs over the last couple of years, obviously since COVID, and you're coming back into the world now. But nowadays you see me at private events. That's where I tend to get mainly booked.
Not just weddings, you do private events too.
I do everything. Yeah, absolutely. I tend to be I'm very flexible with events that I perform at. So nowadays my life takes me to corporate work, it takes me to private events, but weddings are at the heartbeat of what I do. They are in my blood now because I've spent so many years in the wedding industry. People know me as the magic guy for the weddings, which is great.
That's great.
Most of my work comes in via recommendations, referrals, repeat work, which is beautiful.
That's the best way.
Yeah, it's lovely to always be recommended, and I always say that to people. Thank you so much for recommending me. It means the world. And again, being on the circuit for so long as well, people tend to know who Ed Crafer is, or even if I'm still called Magical Ed or Magic Ed,
they'll find you.
They'll find me. Yeah. You can find me on Google. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I do have my YouTube channel as well, which is Ed C Magician, Ed with a double D.
So is there magic on there?
There is a little bit of magic on there. I've been very, very, I've been quite forward thinking with the way of actually presenting myself. So it's really important to get some good magic on YouTube, because you and I spend so much time on YouTube researching and looking at different things, and even as I say, YouTube is a great way to find a local magician.
So if a couple was to inquire with you,
yeah,
do you do like a video call with them, or do you meet them beforehand?
Absolutely. I naturally, let's start from the beginning. So I'll get an inquiry through the website or a phone call. Immediately, I'd love to try and get into a FaceTime call or a Zoom call.
So on FaceTime, do they say, well, can you show me some magic? Can you show me what you do?
They don't actually expect that. I actually tease them with that. So I say, look, if you're well behaved, I'll treat you to a little bit of magic. So it'll have you on the edge of your seat. And they're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. It's like you get a free magic show over the call, which is great.
And this is the benefit, obviously, of video calls. If I was a bride and groom, then we've had the video call. We've done the magic. You've shown me some magic on there. Would you tell me what you're planning to do on that day, or is it a surprise? Obviously, I've seen what you carry. You bring it's like a briefcase.
I bring my briefcase.
You've got lots of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Do you, on the day, decide what tricks you're going to do, or do you let the bride and groom know what you're planning on doing?
I don't think it's important to actually have a structure of what particular trick or set of routines you're going to perform for every group, or even to the whole wedding. I love the spice of life, which is variety. So I will have worked on, over my years of working as a wedding magician, or a magician in general, lots of variety of tricks and routines that I perform. And it's not just what I feel like doing on the day, it's what I feel works at that particular group or table, or what that particular audience of guests are at a wedding.
You get a feel for the room.
You do.
I specifically feel that as a videographer, working with the guests and obviously the bride and groom, you get a feel of that day pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a magical host, because now this is something you brought in. Was it towards the end of COVID you decided to bring this in?
Yeah, I did.
Talk to us about. So did you choose to do that before we went into COVID, or was this something that you thought about during the COVID time and then you went to it?
Interesting. Being a magical host, James, I wanted to find something that pushed me out of my comfort zone, because I've performed at many weddings over my years. I'm 36 years old at the moment, and I've done a lot of shows since, mentioned earlier, at the age of 8 years old. I wanted to do something which pushed me out of my own comfort zone and gave me a challenge, instead of performing during just the drinks reception or the evening change around, or being the magician all day. I wanted to do something where it excited me just as much, and it brought something different to the industry. And I can confidently say no other wedding magician in this area performs as a magical host.
So, as a host, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So, as a host, you think Toastmaster. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we had Paul on the other week.
Paul's fantastic. I love Paul.
He talked about being a host as a DJ.
That's
so
right.
Obviously, his hosting style would be certainly different to what you bring.
Absolutely.
And obviously, that would be different to what a Toastmaster would bring. Mm-hmm. What is a magical host? Explain it to me.
A magical host is, for me, a magician and a host, or an MC, master of ceremonies, during the course of a wedding. Let's start from the beginning. So I'm welcoming guests upon their arrival, helping people feel comfortable. This is after the ceremony, because I don't do anything during the ceremony, because normally the wedding couple are with the celebrants at that time, or the registrar.
They've got to do all their paperwork and everything like that.
Absolutely. So when all the guests and the wedding couple come out of the ceremony area, the couple are handed those glasses of champagne. That's where I kick into touch. So I'll start with a little bit of announcing, but mainly at that time during the drinks is when I begin. I'll be doing the close-up magic, mingling from group to group.
So you're going from host to magician?
Absolutely.
Throughout the day?
I flick between the two, and I'm very relaxed with it. It's really important to be relaxed and confident in how you are in yourself, so people can feel confident and relaxed in your presence, and you can help them feel entertained, as then they trust you as well.
So as a host, do you help the photographer and the videographer get the groups for group photos?
Yeah, that can be a role which I play. I can help the photographer plan any particular group shots, and get people to help stand in the right place at the right time, guiding people where they need to be. When people need to then go to the wedding breakfast area, I'll go from group to group in a very relaxed way, saying, "It's now time, ladies and gentlemen and friends. Can we all make our way inside to the such and such room or suite at the wedding breakfast is about to take place?"
So do you bring your own equipment? So like speakers and microphones. So you bring all this, so the venue don't have to provide that. That's something that you bring.
That's right, and it quite often happens when you turn up to the venue and say, "I'm doing this and I'm doing this. I'm the magician and host," and you see them relax. They're like,
this weight off the shoulders gone.
Oh, it's like we don't have to get anyone to pull the short straw, and Brian or Tony over there doesn't have to announce the couple, and they don't even know who the couple are, because they're so engrossed in all the planning of the day and running around all the plates and the glasses all positioned correctly. You're taking that burden away from them. They're like, well, okay, we can leave it to you. I welcome the bride and groom into the room once I've got all the guests seated. So I'll actually welcome the bride and groom into the room to thunderous rounds of applause and cheers and everyone waving the napkins.
That's just for you.
That's just for me. So they're so excited to know I'm there. Like, thank you, folks. I'll pay you later. So I'll bring the couple into the room to exciting music, and if the couple ask me to beforehand, because we go through a lot of extensive planning.
So do you if they ask you for choices for music, or do you put something together
Yeah, sometimes the bride and groom have a specific song that they'd like me to play.
so they can walk in?
Absolutely. So I'll actually, before the wedding, literally 6 weeks beforehand, I get in touch with my couples if they ask me to host their wedding day as well. I'll go through all the planning stage, and that's what I call last minute. So even though it's 6 weeks beforehand, I like things to be planned nice and early so we all know what we're doing. We're all singing off the same hymn sheet.
Fantastic.
So I'll plan all the music. I'll plan all my scripting, or all my notes on my iPad, so I've got everything ready there so there's no surprises on the day. And if there are any surprises, it's fine. Before the ceremony for the couple, I'll actually arrive around about an hour beforehand. I'll set my own bits and pieces up. I'll introduce myself to the venue if I've never met them before. And if they have met me before, great. I can just say, this is what I'm doing. Do you have a run sheet? Is it the same as mine? Fantastic. We're on the same page. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, there's no surprises. And if there are, we just have a conversation during the day.
So if a couple said to you, right, I want you to get everyone set down.
Yes.
We're going to do speeches. Can you put a little show on for us? Is that something you could offer?
It is. It is something I'd perform actually before the speeches.
Okay. Do you do this anyway, or is this something that they specifically ask for?
This is something that I offer quite frequently, and I find that it relaxes the crowd, or the guests in this case, and that gets them also then excited, ready, and whipped up into a frenzy for the speeches, because there can be quite a lull. You know, you've had lots of food, you've had 3 courses, sometimes 4, you've had a lot of wine, you've had a lot of chit chat. You've caught up with people on your table. You back and forth to the bar. You might be feeling a little bit kind of worse for wear. So you need something exciting to whip you up into a nice party atmosphere. And that's what I do.
What I like about that is because that, in some ways, that takes you back to your roots as Magical Ed.
That's right.
Because you have the best of both. You have the wedding side, and then you have your kind of stage performance side in the cabaret.
Yeah,
I love it, and it brings it all nicely together.
Oh, thank you.
So you've done the cabaret.
Yeah, that's about 10-12 minutes I offer there. So around about 10-12 minutes, and there's a little bit of comedy magic, mind reading.
You have a bit of banter with the best man.
Absolutely, yeah. Because again, it's whatever you can bring to that wedding day to make it different and bring variety to it. So can I tell you about a trick that I'm working on?
Absolutely,
brilliant. So
is this an exclusive?
A little bit of exclusive.
Okay, right,
so I'm always trying to work on new things, and something I've been playing around with at weddings lately is a new trick with 3 envelopes.
Okay.
In one of the envelopes is £5, and I want the audience member that I choose, because it's my choice of who I want to play with in the game. I want them to choose which envelope will win. Will have £5.
So they could win the £5.
They could. So
I mean, they're not gonna, but they could.
They do actually. They do actually win.
They do.
So one envelope says mine. The other one says yours, and then there's a mystery envelope. Okay. Whichever envelope the audience member chooses, they actually win £5, and it's like a bit of mind reading, a bit of psychology. But the interesting thing is, the other 2 envelopes that they didn't choose has a higher denomination of money in it. So the next envelope has £50, for example, and the next one might have a cheque.
So when you open them, they go, we just want a £5.
Yeah, but they're still £5 better off than when they came in earlier.
That's a drink at the bar.
Absolutely. So sometimes that person's actually given me the £5 back, and they've said, that was brilliant, there's a tip for you. And it's hilarious. It's like, oh no, that was your prize. So I said, no, have it back.
Is this new for this year?
This is something new I've been playing around with as a little routine, and it just helps to bring the crowd in and get their attention, because we love it. The blokes love a little bit of gambling and the concept of gambling, teaching them how to gamble, especially if you're doing playing card routines.
Do you guests think when they first book a wedding, magician? Because they certainly don't always think that with videographer.
I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I've had situations in the past where they've actually booked me first before the photographer.
Wow!
And it's like, why have you done that for? Go and book the photographer first. Come back to me. And they, like, if they're there with me face to face, they look at me like I'm crazy. And it's like, go and book the photographer first, then come back to me. Don't worry. I'll pencil it in the diary. Don't worry. I'll keep your date here. I'll let you know if anything happens. Book the photographer first, then come back to me.
We are very lucky in Norfolk. We have some beautiful venues.
We do.
Do you ever travel outside of Norfolk?
Yes, I do. I'm always on the road. I sometimes feel like I live in the car. My poor wife Emma, she's like, "What time are you coming home? Are you coming home to me?" It's like, "Yes, darling, I will. I promise." So yeah, she's very understanding. So sometimes events can run over, whether it's a Christmas party or a corporate event or even a wedding. They do run over, and you have to be ready to accommodate those changes. So she is very understanding.
So very quickly, because we're going to have Leo come and ask you a question in a few minutes. But before we get to Leo,
yes,
I just want to ask you about social media.
Okay.
So you've got, obviously, you said YouTube, Instagram, Facebook.
Yes.
How often would you say you're pretty good on social media? Because I know some suppliers find it hard to keep up with it. Obviously, there's always trends, as we talked about with Paul, TikTok. There's all different sorts of things.
Yeah.
Are you someone who finds social media easy to do? Do you think it's an important part of what you do?
I think it's a very important part, especially in the modern day that we live in now, that you are...
But you mentioned Yellow Pages at the beginning of today.
Yellow Pages, that was where it first began for me, and you put your little ads in there, and it's actually quite expensive for a young person like myself in the day, and Mum and Dad were very, very kind to help me, obviously, with finance things. But moving to social media, it's really important that you have a good social media. For me, I love taking a selfie with a couple, or just having a nice posy picture with the couple to say I've been there, loved being with you. Or back in the day, I used to have my selfie stick. That was something that I really used a lot.
That was kind of a trademark for you.
That's
really,
right.
The selfie stick, and you used to get everyone behind you doing a silly face or a wave.
That's right. Yeah, or doing a funny dance, and I have a quick video of it. And I back in the day, I used to actually incorporate it and create a little video and post on my social media.
I mean, not stealing my job or anything. But...
Absolutely, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah,
but it was something fun to post on my Facebook or Instagram that the couple could see and has a memento as well as just the magic. Look, he didn't have to do that, but he still did that. It was something extra fun for me. I don't unfortunately have time to do that quite so much because I'm heavily engrossed in the magic and interacting with people nowadays. And times move, times change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really does.
But yeah, to answer your question, for me, it's Facebook and Instagram, which is really integral to my business, as well as a good website. I spend a lot of time designing my website myself, as well as the cogs that turn in the background to give my couples a personal experience. And that's really important.
It's got to be a quality website. It's got to be easy to access. And again, with social media, you're easy to find on there.
Absolutely. Again, social media, everywhere you find me is Ed C Magician. That's my handle, my tag, or the website, which is either norfolkmagician.com or it's norwichmagician.co.uk.
Right, so I'm going to hand you over to Leo now, who actually has got 2 questions to ask you.
He's got 2 for me. I'm not prepared for this.
So I'm going to hand over to Leo now.
Hi, Leo.
How many deck of cards do you own, and what's your favourite magic trick?
Oh, Leo, it's great to hear your little voice, my friend. Good to hear from you. Thank you for the questions. Well, to answer your first question, how many decks of cards do I own? I wish I could tell you the exact number. Honestly, if I counted up every single deck of cards that I've bought and used in my life, it would fill up the size of my lounge.
Wow.
The amount of decks of cards that I've gone through is phenomenal. Keeping in mind that I use a brand new deck of cards every performance that I perform.
Well, I've seen you throw cards around Dunstan Hall before, so
yeah.
I know they go everywhere.
I throw playing cards everywhere. Obviously, in particular tricks and routines and presentations. But yeah, I've gone through a lot of deck of cards. But unfortunately now, I can't tell you exactly how many decks of cards I have, but it's a lot.
So yeah, that's that question. What was your other question? It was how many... What was Ed's favourite magic? What's your favourite magic trick? Yeah,
what's my favourite magic trick? At the moment, it's the trick with the 3 envelopes.
The 3 envelopes.
At the moment.
The one we just talked about with the £5 and
with the £5, yep. Absolutely. That's my favourite one at the moment. But I go through different stages of my life where I love learning a new trick and thinking, right, how can I make this funny? How can I make this emotional? Because it's really important as a performer that you take your audience on a journey. Whether it's a group of 3 people or a group of an audience of 300 people watching you on stage, what journey are you going to take your audience on to make it funny, memorable, exciting, maybe emotional, depending on your presentation? So I've gone through various parts of my life where I love different tricks for different reasons. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Actually, I can answer your question. I can actually bring it to an actual answer. It's a particular trick which I do with my brides and grooms.
Is this your wedding finale?
It's one of the tricks in my wedding finale.
Don't give too much away.
I'm not going to, no, but it's actually where I get 2 different playing cards by the wedding couple, 1 each, signed to commemorate their wedding day. And something very special happens with those 2 playing cards.
Does it have a specific name?
I can't tell you
can't
exactly
tell me,
what
no.
the trick is called, but also there
Because
is
he doesn't know.
cheeky.
Yeah.
But there's also something else which I produce. I produce something very special in a ball of fire. I can't tell you anything else other than that.
So again, that's an exclusive for a bride and groom
Yeah.
to see on the day.
It's a very exciting, magical moment which makes your jaw hit the floor, and that's for me is what makes what I do so much more interesting as a magician.
So I could sit here and talk to you for hours and
So could
hours
I.
and hours.
It's been so much fun,
It
buddy.
has been fun. But Ed, I'd like to say thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very, very much. Can I put my t-shirt on back again now?
You can, yeah. You can put your clothes back on now.
Thank
That'll be
you.
fine, yeah.
I've been a
It's
bit
like-
cold
he
this
had
whole
to do it.
time.
No, he didn't do it. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we can have a season 2 of the Wedcast next year. I'd love to get you back on.
Yes, please.
We'll talk some more.
Yeah. James, can I just say what you're doing with this podcast is brilliant. You're bringing insight to the wedding industry, and you're bringing something new. And it's been so much fun being here with you. I feel like we've talked for hours. And I feel like subjects have gone all over the place. But what you're doing now, bringing your podcast to the wedding industry for brides and grooms or wedding couples, or even other people who are in the industry as well, it's great. So congratulations
I appreciate
to you.
that. And I think it's nice for, as you said, for suppliers as well, but I think it's nice for bride and grooms to get insight.
Yes.
Because as I said, you could go to a wedding fair, you could Google you online.
Yeah.
But I think to actually hear the passion about what you do,
I love it.
that's how you get across to people.
Yeah. People say to me, "Oh, why are you so energetic?" And it's very simple. I love what I do, and I do what
And
I
it comes
love.
out, it comes across.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
No worries, you're always welcome here. So guys, that has been Ed, live in the studio. He hasn't been tickling me like he promised, but he has got his clothes. There it is.
There we
He has
go.
got his clothes back on. So yes, thank you, Ed, and all the best, and have a brilliant 2023.
Thanks, James, and congratulations to all the wedding couples. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and all the very best with your wedding planning. Hope to speak to you soon.
Right, guys, that's episode 4 wrapped up. Thank you so much, Ed, for being a part of today's show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here and to hear all about what you do and what you bring to a wedding day, and also to hear a little bit about how you got into magic. Also, big thanks to, obviously, the regular Mr. Leo, who comes in with the questions. I don't know what Leo's going to ask each week. It's always so much fun. So thank you, Leo. Thank you, Ed. Which next week is episode 5, obviously. I'm not going to tell you who's coming on next week, but I can tell you this. The suppliers are coming thick and fast. We've had photography, we've had DJ, we've had casino, we've had magician. What could possibly be next? You'll have to tune in next Wednesday on the Wedcast to find out. But I will tell you this, you don't want to miss it, so make sure you tune in. Have a fantastic week, guys. I'll see you next Wednesday, Wedcast Day. All the best.